Hello, right. So I'm on another journey to Devon, and I just stopped. It was dark when I set off. Obviously, winter is upon us, or fast approaching.
I had cancer. It was eye cancer,
and I am driving the Honda Jazz again to the same destination, but this time I'm testing a microphone because all the videos that I've done before it's been not too noisy, and a friend of mine is an audio, I mentioned this before, he's an audio specialist, a very talented guy.
Turn right, then take the first right.
And he basically tried to reduce the noise using all expensive software, I guess. Just after this guy's fucking daydreaming. Excuse my French. Right, so I've got this, it's kind of a cheap Rode
turn right
wireless setup, but it's the cheap version, and it cost me 95 quid for 2 transmitters, which is what I'm wearing here, and 1 receiver, which is attached to the Sony. So let's see what this does. Anyway, so I'm 150 miles in. There was no point setting up the camera.
Turn right, then take the first left.
Because it was dark. Although this Sony camera's got a nighttime feature, but it switches itself off for a start. But the other thing about
it is
at the end
of the street, turn left.
It's still not very good. Right, so I always stop at this service station. It's not that I intend to, but I've just noticed I end up here.
Continue 9 miles.
Right, so I've had the car now. It's got 3,700 miles. I'm doing 60 miles. You fucking wanker. See, what a wanker. Right, so he actually speeded up there, so that I didn't pull out in front of him, but he was doing about 50, and he slowed down again now. That's the problem with drivers, some drivers. Anyway, so I set off early this morning. I've done 167 miles, and I've mostly been doing 60 miles an hour. Last time I did 56. And I got 79.2 miles to the gallon. This time I'm doing 60 where I can, and I'm getting 66.3. So that's what, 12-13 miles per gallon less for the sake of 4 miles per hour. And it does nosedive after that, I've noticed. So if I do 70, then I'll average 54 miles to the gallon. So I'm not, you know what, I'm not really sure it's worth the extra, right, to save 20 minutes or half an hour or whatever, but I do find it frustrating to travel at 56. Now most HGVs are limited to 56. Which of course means that on a downhill stretch they're doing kind of 60, 62, whatever, and then on an uphill stretch they're doing 50 or less. So basically, right, it's just started raining as well, so my forward looking view is going to be a little bit obscured. So basically, it's an uncomfortable speed to drive at. Now I set off this morning at 5 o'clock, so there was very little traffic on the road, yet there was an upended car on the M1. No other car involved, so they must have just either hit the barrier or lost control. Tiny thing as well. It didn't look like there was anybody injured, thankfully. But it just goes to show, possibly, I mean, there was nothing there. The road was straight. The tyres looked intact, so it didn't appear to be a blowout. So I'm assuming it's just speed, or perhaps somebody fell asleep at the wheel. But anyway, it closed 3 lanes of the 4-lane stretch of the M1 near Stapleford. But again, I had adaptive cruise on and lane keeping assist, and it's just so comfortable. I mean, I've done this on the M25 as well. It just slows down as the car in front speeds up. It then slowly speeds up, and then of course it's all stop start. But it does it all for you. So I remember the old days when you were in and out of gear, foot on the clutch, and the clutches were heavy back then. And I do remember always being stuck in a traffic jam, or at least a tailback on the A1. I think it was around about the time they were doing it up, and for years there just seemed to be like a contraflow system, and it's obviously, or at that time anyway, at that part near Newark, it's 2 lanes. I think it still is. Anyway, so I've had the car now. I've been driving it for 3,700 miles, and apart from the first journey I did, which was a repeat of this journey, the petrol consumption has been amazing. But I will say this: between driving at 50 miles an hour and driving at 70, there's a huge nosedive in consumption. So if at 50 miles an hour you can get 80 plus miles to the gallon. At 60 I'm getting around about 66. At 56 I got 79. So that 4 miles per hour difference leads to a fuel consumption increase of 13-14 miles to the gallon. And over this size journey, that's probably, let's say, 25 miles, which will take about 20 minutes. So you're probably saving 20-25 minutes on your journey for that extra 4 miles per hour, and it's going to cost, in terms of miles per gallon, 4 times 13-ish, 4 or 5. So you're losing about 80 miles worth of petrol, I guess, in the fuel consumption. Right, so the real problem though is when you are driving at 56, you're in and out of the HGVs all the time, and you need a lot of patience from that perspective. And it's never the case. They will travel, it seems, as fast as they possibly can. So if they're doing a downhill, it will roll faster than the speed limiter, obviously, and it won't arrest that speed, so they'll be doing then 60. So they'll be overtaking you. If you're leaving it on adaptive cruise, they'll be overtaking you on a downhill stretch, and you'll be overtaking them on an uphill stretch, because they'll be foot down, and their speed will reduce to maybe 45 or even less if it's a steep hill. So you've got this kind of argy-bargy. It's not particularly a hassle, but it just makes, it kind of makes it more uncomfortable. You could just follow them, I suppose. Now somebody's already said don't do that, principally because stone chips, these things will kick up pretty big stones, and are responsible for quite a lot of windscreen damage. So that's not something you want to do either. So at 60 you'll be losing that. You'll be paying probably on this length of journey at these prices, you'll be paying an extra 5 or 6 quid. It's neither here nor there really, on such a long journey. Both ways, that's an extra tenner. But a round trip of nearly 600 miles, you might just think it's not worth it. But it's only 4 miles per hour the difference. And of course, the thing about that is, you're really only going you're going 4 miles per hour slower, and then you've got that little bit of extra hassle. And what I tend to do is, if I pull out like I've done now to overtake an HGV, I tend to just clip up a few miles per hour so that I can get past it quicker and then not hold up the traffic behind me.
In 3/4 of a mile, keep right of the M5.
Now, I have noticed, and I'm not being self-righteous about this, but if I do 70, if I put it on 70, 3/4 of the traffic is overtaking me. So that means 3/4, I mean,
1/2 mile,
significantly.
be in any of the 2 right lanes, then keep right.
So that means 3/4 of the traffic is speeding. They're actually speeding.
Be in any of the 2 right lanes, then keep right.
Let's say systematically speeding. Which is something you don't notice when you're driving at 70, or you don't notice as much when you're driving at 60.
Continue 9 miles on the M5.
When you're driving at 60, you notice it a lot more. Just an interesting thing to point out. Right, so a couple of things. The adaptive cruise works brilliantly, and when I'm on the motorway, I actually set the spacing, which is, I think it's 1 bar to 4 bars, and that's the distance between you and the vehicle in front. So it will then obviously slow down. If you put it on 4 bars, it will slow down, leaving a bigger gap. So I normally put it on 3 when I'm on the motorway. And then of course I've got the adaptive cruise on, which is absolutely superb. I've never used it in cars I've had previously, even if they were fitted. But having tried it out on the Jazz, I have to say it really is it's a boon, and particularly if you're stuck in stop-start traffic as well, because in stop-start traffic, and it does say in the manual, don't use it in that kind of traffic, but that's where it's the most useful. Now, I don't know why they say don't use it, but I'm guessing it's got something to do, with the fact that you're having to accelerate, slow down, brake, stop, accelerate, slow down, brake, stop, whatever. This is exactly the time it's the most useful. I mean, it's useful everywhere. If you're on a motorway and the traffic builds up and it slows down, which I've encountered on the M25, well, all the time, it's just dead easy. You literally just sit there and let the car drive. It keeps you in the centre of the lane. You'll get an alarm if you take your hands off the steering wheel, but I think you could have no problem whatsoever taking your hands off the steering wheel in that kind of traffic, where you're doing 5-10 miles an hour max. And maybe they should make it so that you can do that if you're going so slow. But I'm guessing there will be some health and safety kind of issue regarding that. But overall, when you do use, when you do use these features, it helps you in all circumstances, not just in stop-start traffic. I mean, I've got it on now. I've got one hand resting on the wheel just in case, and so on. And then you've got the lane keeping assist, keeping you in your lane. And of course, when so if you don't indicate, it will try to stop you from changing lanes. But if you indicate, obviously that must somehow feed into the system and allow you to to change lanes without any resistance. But now, the thing about it is, under normal driving conditions, the lane keeping assist and the adaptive cruise, yeah, of course you're still looking out of the window, you're still keeping an eye on your mirrors for your situational awareness, what's going on around you, this and the other. But it takes the stress, completely takes the stress out of driving. If you do get distracted, changing the radio or putting an audio book on or whatever, messing with the sat nav, and I'll come on to that in a second, then it's a real safety feature. You won't drift off course or whatever. I remember in the old days, everything was manual. If you were changing a cassette, if you can remember that far back, or if you were around that far back, there's a potential that as you do that, you drift, and of course that's then potentially hazardous for you and everybody else. This thing, nothing at all. I've got 100% confidence in it now. At first I wasn't, but now I've done about 3,700 miles, and all long journeys I do use all of these features. I switch them on and I set the parameters. One thing I haven't tried yet is where it does the recognition of the signs. Now when I'm looking at it here, it's showing no speed limit. I'm on the motorway. It does work off the camera, I guess, rather than GPS, and it's not recognising it here, so that won't work in all circumstances, but it's something that I'm going to try. I'm down in Devon for 2 weeks, so I might give it a try over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, all good, very stress-free. Every now and again, of course, it does. It beeps when it doesn't think you've got your hands on the wheel. No, I don't take my hands off the wheel, but I rest like just like with one arm, and then the other hand can be free to do to vape or whatever. So I'm really pleased. With all of these features and controls, and I actually tell people now, so the car practically drives itself, and whilst obviously I think it can certainly drive itself in motorway situations. If you were happy to sit in the inside lane, or lane 1 as they call it now, I understand, then literally you just rest your hand on the wheel and it does everything else for you. If you took your hand off the wheel and there wasn't an alarm system, then I think in most circumstances this thing will drive you I've driven all the way down the M5, M1, M42, M5, and it's been on all the time, and it's absolutely fantastic. Very, very low stress. So that's a good thing, right? So I'm gonna criticise the GPS. It is useless. I've used it now a few times where I needed it, so I didn't know where I was going, and it took me all over the place. And my ex-wife was with me as well, and she said this is just the wrong route. It's absolutely not the right way to go. In fact, it's a long way around. And then on the other side of the coin, God knows what it tries to take me through London, just passing that large bridge at Bristol. It tries to take me through London, or via the M25, let's say. There's a guy he's doing 50 miles an hour here, so I'm just gonna overtake him. Right, now I haven't touched the accelerator. It's just that the radar, or whatever it is, the camera, whatever it uses, knows that this guy, I speed it up now, well, there's a guy in front of me now, he's doing 56. So that's
In
what...
3/4 of a mile, keep right of the M5.
It's kind of one of the downsides of this. Well, it's not a downside at all, in fact. But if somebody's doing like 50, you know, or whatever, then you'll just slow down with it. Then you'll lose.
In 1/2 mile, be in any of the 3 right lanes, then keep right.
You lose your momentum. So when you can see somebody's coming up and you know that you want to overtake them, then you should get out early. Which may well annoy other people.
Be in any of the 3 right lanes, then keep right.
I've got a lorry, and because I'm going to Devon, obviously, right, I can feel that slowing down now because this guy's not doing 60.
Continue 72 miles on the M5.
Right, so so this guy here on the left, he's obviously doing about 50 or 55, and then as you get close to him, it obviously starts to slow you down and you lose that momentum. And what happens is you just get that there's a bit of a knack to it. Well, not so much a knack, but you just get used to it. So when I see somebody ahead that's going slow, I kind of got a feeling when the car's going to start slowing me down, and then I pull out before then if I can, which is great. So that's another really top feature. And you'd be surprised how many people these days, and I think it's probably because of the price of fuel, who will be doing like 56 on lane 1 or the inside lane. And I think that's because 56 used to be the optimum speed for a carburettor engine. It isn't anymore, and it's certainly not in a Variamatic. And that's why they used to have twin carburetors, so it would optimize at 2 speeds. But these days, when it's all fuel injection and belt driven like this is, or 9-speed gearbox, then you've got you have to deal with it in a different way. So there we are, just past Bristol. It's 100 miles now from Bristol to destination. Just have a quick drink. This is a superb flask I got from Home Bargains, and it's got a little clip on it, so you can nice hot coffee. Made it about 4:45 this morning, and it's still piping hot, and it fits nicely in the cup holder. So if you get a bit of a dry throat. Right, back to the GPS. It's got to be the worst GPS, and it's a Garmin GPS, I understand. It's got to be the worst GPS I've ever had in a car. Now, when I used to fly a lot, the GPSs were more typically Garmin. In fact, I can't remember ever flying any kite, as we used to call them, without a Garmin GPS. Of course, in the Air Force, you've got inertial navigation and all sorts of VOR and all sorts of different other systems. But if you have a GPS, the great thing about GPS in an aircraft is it doesn't matter what we used to have to work out the crosswinds from data that was 3 or 4 hours old, and then adjust your route to take in that crosswind vector. But of course these days they've all got like twin Garmin GPS, and they work perfectly fine. But of course, it's a tiny map when you're flying an aircraft. Using this Garmin road system map, I can't even imagine how poor the internal software is for it to make the decisions it makes. So a couple of examples. I was in Torquay, and we wanted to go to a small village which has got, it's like a tourist attraction, and it took 15 miles And my ex-wife said, well, that's just ridiculous, it's only 3 miles away. I mean, admittedly, the 3 miles away was on tiny routes. This thing tends to, I don't know what it favours. I mean, if you're going to, right, so the journey I take, and I've mentioned this before, but now I've got a microphone on, you might hear me this time. The journey I take is I go down the M1, I think it's the A42, which is a dual carriageway that takes you onto the M42, and then straight down the M5 for 200 miles, or whatever it is. You can't get a more direct route. And this thing wants to take you to the M25, round the M25, up the M4, and then onto the lower part of the M5, which adds 100 miles onto the journey. So that's absolute garbage for a start. And then recently, I just put it on. I didn't really know where I was going. It was around my home city, but an unfamiliar part of the city. And it took me down dead-end streets. Now, admittedly, I mean, these streets have been dead-end for years. It's not like it's a recent thing. And I couldn't get onto the main road from like kind of one of the side roads, and it had no clue how to get me there. So in the end, I had to ask directions. And so basically, I'm going to give it 0 out of 10 for usefulness. And if you have to rely on it, then you've got no idea where this thing's going to. I mean, it could add 100 miles onto your journey. Could be even more, or it's going to take you down roads that are, not fit for cars or whatever. It just doesn't work. And I have to say that I've used it probably. I always put it on for this journey, even though I know where I'm going. I don't know why actually, because on the old one it told you how far you'd got to go to your destination. This one doesn't. It tells you to the next waypoint, and it gives you an arrival time, but it doesn't tell you how many miles. Not that I can see anyway. So I've got this. So I've got nothing good to say about it. I mean, it's a lovely display, blah blah blah, and it will zoom in and zoom out so you can see the road that you're on. But when you don't know where you're going, the important thing is it takes you an efficient route. Now I've been into the settings, and I've switched off toll roads because it tried to take me up the M6 toll. And just now as well, when we got to the M42, the M42 goes directly to the M5, and it was switching me to the right lane to take me to the M6, presumably then to get onto the M5. There's no logic to that. It's not quicker, it's not shorter. I don't know why it does that. So whilst having a sat nav is always a good thing in a car, this one is practically pointless. I mean, you'll get there in the end to wherever it is you're going, but if it's going to add 100 miles onto your journey, you might as well use a road map and plan your route beforehand. So I'm sorry to say that it's not a system that I'm interested in using. Fortunately, I can put Google Maps on through the Apple CarPlay. I'm not going to do that on this journey, but when I'm here and I'm going somewhere that I've just absolutely no clue where I'm going, I'm not going to use this. I will use Google Maps. So that's a downside, and it should be better than this. I was thinking about writing to Honda, but I'm guessing they've done some sort of deal, and it's kind of pointless. But I've put feedback on the Honda Jazz Club website, and it probably doesn't do anybody any good if they haven't got a mobile phone that works with Apple CarPlay. They've got no other choice other than a paper-based road map, but I would say that a paper-based road map is a lot better than this. So that is the one downside to this car. There's a couple of niggling little things, but I'm not even going to mention them because the two niggling. The seats are comfortable still. I've done 3,700 miles now. I can do any length of journey and feel refreshed at the other side, partly because of the lane keeping assist and the other features. The petrol consumption is the best I've ever had in a car, although like I said, it jumps off a cliff. At 50 you just get phenomenal miles per gallon. At 56 you get just a shade under 80. At 60, which is mostly what I'm doing today, I'm expecting to get about 65, right? Which is, I mean, that's good by any standards. So from the, you know, so from a petrol consumption perspective, and this car's fully loaded. I mean, I've got computers in the back, got my luggage. I'm here for 2 weeks, so I've taken a lot more things than I would normally take. I weigh about 90 kilos myself. So it's pretty well laden, and to get, oops, this lorry's gone a bit. Just keep an eye on him. Probably falling asleep. So so from that perspective, no complaints at all. Alright, there's another guy. I've just pulled in and there's a guy doing about 50. I think they're all doing the same thing. Right, so it started to slow me down there. I think this guy, I reckon there's a whole train of them as well, if you've noticed here, and I think they're all doing 56, and I think that's a good idea. With fuel prices up, what, 20%? Typically they're around 140, and now they're about 170, so that's what, it's about 22%. So if you could get 22% better fuel consumption by slowing down, then job done. Right, there was a guy, I'm going to talk about tyres for a sec. This has got 16-inch wheels on it, but the size is not it's not common. So if you have to replace the tyres, then either you have to take it back to Honda, or you have to hunt around for somebody that does this very unusual size tyre. I mean, it's not just the fact that it's 16 inch, it's the width and all sorts. And then people have been saying they're only getting 15 to 20,000 miles, when normally these days you expect better than that. I mean, normally I would expect 25 to 30,000. So that's something I don't know about yet, because obviously I haven't driven it enough. But I'd be some people are saying 12,000 miles. I'd be disappointed to get 12,000 miles out of the first set of tyres. Now I looked this up, so I couldn't quite believe it. But that's what people are saying, is far and wide, not just people in the UK, but people in the US and other places. Now I don't know what roads they're driving on, or what sort of mileage. I do very low mileage normally. I mean, I would expect to do about 6,000 or 7,000 miles this year, because this will probably be my last trip to Devon until the weather improves after the winter, and that's responsible for about over 2,000 of that 3,700. Done a couple of trips to London, so that's so let's say it's going to be about 4,000 miles by the time I get back. I'll probably then do 1,500 miles between now and next March. I mean, I am actually going to London again a couple of times, so that'll add about another 700 miles onto it. So I would expect it to last about 2 years before I need a new set of tyres, and that's on these estimates that people are, well, not estimates, what people have been reporting, that the tyres don't last very long. And then somebody came up with an explanation basically saying that they're a special kind of tyre because of the weight of the batteries in the car and all the rest of it. Well, I don't accept that. I accept that this car is not heavy, whatever batteries weigh, if you know what I mean. Which brings me on to another point. It is a hybrid, but I can tell you this: it doesn't last. It charges up really quickly. I've got about less than half a mile drive to my office. I've got my own firm, and it's all downhill, and it's a steep hill. So if I put it in B mode when I set off, I'm hardly touching the accelerator, and I'm going downhill all the time, all the way to the office, and it's fully charged from 2 or 3 bars. By the time I get to work, it's fully charged. Now, you might think, alright, that's great, but if I drive from my office to the shop, which is about a mile, that charge is gone and the engine kicks in again. So I'm not quite sure how that helps. I mean, the engine itself, considering it's a 1.5 litre engine, gets great. It gets absolutely great fuel consumption, and I mean great. But if this battery charges up over half a mile, and then it's gone, whatever it uses, over a mile, it can only be of any use, as far as I can see, is if you're in town and you're actually you are only going like half a mile or something, or even a mile, you know, in slow traffic. Maybe it will last a lot longer then, but it's a flat road, and by the time I get to the shops, the battery indicator's depleted. But again, like I said, you know, it also charges up really quickly. So it can't be that big a battery. Admittedly, it's got to pull a car along, but you've got these plug-in hybrids or whatever, totally electric Teslas, whatever, where they'll do 200, or claim they do 250 miles on a full charge. So I can understand them having heavy-duty, heavy batteries, but I don't think this has got a big battery in it at all. I mean, if it can't propel you more than a mile, then, you know, what's it really doing? And yet you seem to get great fuel consumption, but it might just be that 1.5 litre engine, petrol engine, is just great anyway. I mean, I can't see it using, I don't know about this for certain, but I can't see it using the battery whilst you're driving at 60 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour. But it might be a combination of the both. I'm not sure how that works. I mean, it's indicating 4 bars at the moment. So I'm assuming when you go downhill, it charges it up a little bit. Right, it's just gone down to 3. So, but it's showing me so now it's gone down to 3. The average fuel consumption bar indicator has dropped from 140 to 50 or whatever it is. GoPro. I've ordered a new camera as well, the Insta360 X2, which is uses a 360 camera, so you just put one camera in your car or wherever, and it records everything around you, and then you can edit it and you can pick where you want to look. So look at my face, look sideways, look forward. Whereas at the moment what I do is I use a GoPro to look forward, and then I use my Sony camera, which is kind of set up with tissue papers in an old coffee cup. I've got a proper what do you call it, tripod, which connects via Bluetooth, so I can actually stop recording by pressing a button on this, or start recording. But the Insta360's got voice control, so you can say start recording, stop recording, and you don't have to point it at anything, because it basically takes the whole 360 degree view. It uses two lenses. There must be obviously ultra wide angle lenses, and it records 5.7K resolution, and then of course as you zoom in to make it linear so it looks like a normal film, that resolution drops, and some say it drops below HD, but you've got some control over that. So I'm looking forward to using that. I can waffle on about whatever. Yeah, so what's the other thing? Right, so with respect to the tyres, I can't confirm it, but I can say that a lot of people are saying that your first set of tyres are only lasting 15 to 20,000 miles. Now, I don't know what the difference between 15 and 20,000 might be, the kind of road surfaces or whatever. But yeah, that's not a lot. I would expect double that. Well, let's say up to 30. I would be happy with 30,000 miles on your first set. We all know that when you replace them, they never last as long as the first set. And it's unlikely that I will be replacing the tyres anytime soon, because I just don't know that. So I don't do that sort of mileage. It's going to be at least 2.5 years, and by that stage, what tends to happen is the dealer rings you up and say, "Oh, we've got a new spec, blah blah blah." And then you end up doing a new. I've never kept a car more than like 2.5 years. If I sign for a 3-year, I do these PCP agreements. If I sign for a 3-year one, it's gone after 2. This one I've signed a 4-year one, and that's what they offered me, and it was cheaper to do it that way. Probably not cheaper in the long run, but it was cheaper to do it that way. And there's a 5-year servicing and warranty on it, so why not? But I know for a fact that after 2 years in this, there'll be 15,000 miles on it, and I'll take it back and get something else. I mean, I do like the look of the CR-V. I don't need the big car, because most of the time I'm driving on my own, unless I'm down here. Then I've got the ex-wife and my son we've got a car seat for him in the back, which I keep because she no longer drives. But I like previously had an X5, and I like being high up, and this is not bad. This feels quite high up, but of course it's much higher up. And when I was at the Honda dealership, I had a look at the the CR-V, and it's just lovely. Other cars are too. They're all getting better. I mean, I like Peugeots, I have to say. I'm not going to get one anymore, because the one that I inherited on the divorce was a 2008, which was kind of a mini SUV, and then the replacement 2008 is much bigger. It's just a bigger, bulkier car, and at the moment I just don't need that. I'm not really bothered about getting a car that's bigger than I need. Although, right, so that there is one downside to the Honda Jazz. You can't tow anything. It invalidates the warranty. This has got roof rails on it, but if you put a top box on, or whatever they call it, let's say all the kit and the box weighs 5 kilos, the maximum is 50, so you've got enough for 45 kilos of luggage, you know, which is, I mean, it's enough to put a tent in or whatever if you're into that sort of thing, but you're not allowed to tow with this car. And I checked that with the dealer. I read it and I thought, well, you know, I'm not talking about a caravan, but even you're not allowed to tow anything. So that's a downside. With the CRV, of course, you can tow a caravan or whatever. Not that I would ever do that, but I was just saying it's just one of those things. This car is not designed, obviously, to do any form of towing at all. And if you do fit a hook or whatever and you turn it, then it invalidates the warranty. Now what I was thinking is I was thinking about getting one of those, you know, those tents, trailer tents I think they're called, where you get there, you push a button and it basically puts itself up and they're quite spacious and all the rest of it. It's not like it's kind of glamping. Camping is not really my thing, but I just thought it might be nice, you know, for me son, for him, he'll love it because it's something different. You know, and so on. But when I looked into it, yeah, you can't tow one on this. I mean, and they're not that heavy. That must be something to do with the electric, I don't know, traction and torque or whatever. Right, so the other thing that I noticed on the rear view mirror, the rear parking video image, there are 3. I didn't notice it when I first got the car. Mine defaults to super wide angle, and I thought that was a bit odd at first, but it's absolutely superb, because if you're in a parking bay down at the local supermarket or whatever, on super wide angle you can see everything coming left, right and behind, so you don't need this sideways looking sensor which warns you of people approaching from the side when you reverse it out. You don't need it because you can see everything. But then I noticed the 3 buttons in the corner, it defaults to super wide, and I tried the others, and the others are just, I don't know why you'd bother with them. One thing it does do though is if you bring it in from super wide to narrower, then the depth perception's a lot better. So, you know, if you've got to reverse into a spot and there's a car behind you, or a wall or whatever, then I imagine that will be helpful. But I'm just leaving it in super wide. So in super wide, you start reversing out. If anyone's coming either side, you won't be able to see them by looking, because there'll be a car in the way, or you might be able to spot them through the windows. But otherwise, you just look at this. Look at this thing. It gives you the whole view. And I think this kind of technology is superb. I mean, there's no reason now you should ever pull out in front of something unless the door's lid. But yeah, so that's something. It's a really good feature. Very little to complain. You know what? I've got very little to complain about, except for the GPS. And that GPS, did you see that car there? It's just almost. I mean, probably a couple of meters, but it just cut me wing. I mean, I'm in lane 1, and the motorway is practically empty. I mean, there's the odd splurge of traffic now and again, so there's no need for that. back to comfort. You know, I said it was a comfortable car on my first journey, and 3,000, nearly 4,000 miles later, this is extremely comfortable, and there's nothing to complain about at all. You've got you can put your leg right forward, which on a long journey sometimes you just to change your seating position. Obviously you're not covering any of the, well, you're covering the accelerator and brake, obviously, but when you're driving along on a steady, like we are on this like I am on this motorway, there's very little to do. And when I'm not recording, I'm listening to I like listening to talk radio, and the journey just flies by. And at the end of it, I mean, I'll be a bit tired because I got up at quarter to 5 or 4:30, but I'll have a nap, and then I'll be out and about later on this afternoon. But yeah, I mean, it can't be far away that we've got cars that will drive themselves, and judging by some of the nutcases that you see on the motorways, it's probably a good thing. I mean, there might be some deaths in driverless cars or whatever, but nowhere near as many, is my guess, for allowing people to drive themselves. I mean, I don't want to be particularly sexist, but women drivers, they don't look ahead at all. I mean, there's and also they don't maintain the same speed, which is something you notice a lot more when you use adaptive cruise. And all the way down the M42, there was a woman, she was speeding up, slowing down, so I overtook her, then she speeded up, overtook me. But what she was doing, she was driving to within a metre of my car, then pulling out, and then pulling right in front of me. And it should be more gradual. You look ahead, think, right, okay, I'm going to overtake the guy. You speed up, indicate, look, pull out, overtake, give plenty of room, and then pull back in. And then she did all that and then slowed down again. So then I had to overtake her. So it's kind of, I don't suppose you learn these things. I don't know what they teach you these days, but basically it was, in my day, it was how to change gears, and you do your road signs and all the rest of it. But there's, once you've been driving for a year, you get like what they call it, a road sense. You kind of can second guess what some people are going to do. You'll see somebody bimbling along in the second lane. They'll creep past you by 1 mile an hour more than you're doing, and they're going to pull in right in front of you, which is dangerous, or potentially. They don't leave any room. So in a way, if they do go to driverless cars, everyone will have to have a driverless car. Otherwise you're going to get idiots. Well, they're probably not even idiots, but they haven't got any roads. They don't seem to have built up any road sense. So overtaking someone and cutting in front of them with a metre or two to spare, you'd think the average normal person in the street would think, well, hold on, that's probably a little bit dangerous, rather than go forward an extra 10-15 metres then pull in, or even further, which is what I tend to do. If I'm overtaking and I'm not doing it fast enough, I will just clip the plus button, speed up to 70, get past, give plenty of room, indicate, pull back in, and then reduce speed back down to 60. But if somebody's going along at the same speed as me, I don't bother overtaking them, as long as it keeps a reasonable distance behind them. But what I would not do is drive up a metre behind them. Well, this thing won't let you do that anyway. I think with 3 bars on it, I think it's like 100 foot or 120 foot or whatever it is, which is a nice safe distance. Right, so I've covered the battery, how quickly it depletes, how quickly it charges. So it must be small, charges quickly, depletes quickly. So I do wonder what good it does. I mean, if you removed it completely, just used the engine, I wonder whether the consumption would be just the same. And then the other thing is, of course, if you do drive around in a city and it depletes so quickly, I suppose it's going to help, because it will use the battery when it's fully charged. I mean, it's got 8 bars on it now, or 7 bars. It's got 7 bars in it now. I don't know whether it's, how it's done that. Possibly on a downhill stretch. So I think, somehow it does help, but I don't know how. Sorry about that. Now, some people on the forums have also been saying that they've been driving around in B mode all the time and they're getting better fuel consumption. Well, why would that be? I'm guessing that it's like remember the dynamos that you used to get on push bikes? When you used to flick the dynamo and it'd get traction on usually the rear or the front wheel, I can't remember. But obviously that made pedalling a little bit harder, but then you got power to your lights, stuff like that, which was always considered to be a bit of an advance over having to put 2 ever-ready batteries into your light, and obviously they can fail, or not fail, but the battery runs out and you have no lights. So I'm assuming that in B mode it's kind of a similar thing. When you put it into B mode, it's like kind of a dynamo effect. As you go downhill, the resistance downhill obviously charges the battery. But if you're driving around all day in it on the flat, I would have thought your fuel consumption would be worse. Now, I don't know about that, but maybe that's something worth checking. And what I might do is I might do a week of driving around on drive D, and then a week on B, and see what the difference is. I mean, if you have to suck it and see sometimes. Often these things can be counterintuitive if you don't know how the mechanism works, but that's what people are saying. There's a guy, he gets 100 miles to the gallon. He's obviously not driving around fast, but he drives around in B mode. Maybe that tops up the battery, and then when you're on the flat it uses battery power. But like the law of conservation of energy, that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. If you've got unless you're going downhill, which I can understand the momentum of the car when you don't need to accelerate, you're kind of getting something for nothing there. But in a way you're not really, because you've built up that potential energy by driving up the hill in the first place. And the fact that you've got friction everywhere on the car has got to mean that it saps the energy from either the battery or the petrol. It's got to be one or the other. But I'll give it a try, see for myself. And then see how that pans out. Right, it's 5 to 10, and I'm about 55 miles away. I mean, this is great, really. I mean, I had a good night's sleep last night. I went to bed about 10 o'clock and I was out like a light, so I was tired. Woke up about 4:45, 4:45, wide awake. Did the flask, some food, and then set off. And the journey, I don't know whether it's because you start early in the morning, by like kind of 8 o'clock, you've already done about 100 miles or 120 miles or whatever. And I'll get there, according to this, 10 past 11. So about another hour and 15 minutes. Then I might but I don't feel in the least bit tired, so I might have a bit of a lie down. Let's just pull out. Load of traffic joining the motorway. I might have a lie down, and then later on I'll pop into Torquay, have a bit of a wander around. I actually want to find a camera shop. I'm one of these people that can browse camera, or well, any electronic shop. I mean, Curry's. I'd go to Curry's a lot more if you didn't get hassled so much. I mean, you walk into Curry's and the salesman, they must be on like some kind of competitive commission. The salesmen follow you around, or women follow you around the shop. Can I help? Can I help? Can I help? And you're not in there to buy anything. You're just looking at the latest stuff. And you might see something. Oh, I'll get that next year or next month or whatever. So I can spend all day in a golf shop. I'll never buy anything. So I always get it online because it's cheaper. Any electronic shop, cameras, you name it. And I used to like interchangeable lens cameras, Micro Four Thirds, and then I moved into Canon, Sony. I had a Sony A7, and I got more into video when my son was born because I wanted to record his life. Then I got divorced, so I didn't need that anymore. And now I'm moving to more automatic. And I used to run a camera group on Facebook, and of course they shoot in RAW. If you shoot JPEG, oh, you're a nobody, and this and that. There's a lot of banter. It's a funny thing with cameras. People love the camera. It's an inanimate object, and yet they'll argue and fight over and disagree with each other over the most minor of things. And I used to have to deal with all the complaints that ensue from that. But the thing about it is, over the years, technology's improved so much. I mean, this camera, I've got a Sony ZV-1, and in the days when I had a Lumix Panasonic, which is Micro Four Thirds, the autofocus was appalling, to the point of unusable. Do you know what I mean? But with the Sony ZV-1, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievably good. This guy's taking his time. Caravan. He's probably just coming into shot now. He's taken a good 10 minutes. I don't know what he's doing once he's overtaken me, or he's going to drive all the way like that. I mean, he's probably doing 61 miles an hour, and I'm doing 60. I do moan a lot about other drivers, but yeah, so again, he's going to pull right in front of me, and he's slowing me down. So now I'm doing right. So it's set at. This is what I'm talking about. It's set at 60. He spent 10 minutes overtaking me, pulled in front of me, then slowed down. Well, what was the point? Why doesn't he just stay behind? That kind of thing. Right, now I'm going uphill, or I think I'm going uphill. It might be an optical illusion, and it's showing 100. Right, so okay, it's that bar that goes across that shows you your instantaneous petrol consumption, which can make you a bit paranoid, by the way. That is one thing I've noticed. If it didn't show it, you wouldn't care less, but it gives you your instantaneous consumption. So when it zips across and hits 140, you get a warm feeling inside. And then I'm on the flat now, and it's reduced down. So I wonder whether it kind of uses the electricity from the battery somehow assist. I mean, I will look into that, but I don't know quite how that works. Right, now then, I think I'll make it. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that works, but I'll look into that. Right, the other thing is, I wanted to mention as well while I'm at it, and I know I waffle on, and people probably haven't even got this far, but that coating, I forgot what they call it. I think it's some sort of ceramic coating. Now this car had already got it, because I actually ordered an EX and it was on the computer, and they gave me a delivery date and everything. Anyway, it turned out that the computer was wrong, or it had not updated, or they'd sold 11 of the 10 that were available, and so they rung me up and said, they rung me up like 2 days before delivery, pickup, and basically said there'd been a bit of a mix-up, it was their fault. And I said, yeah, okay, no problem. And I said, when can you deliver? And they'd given me a price for the trade-ins as well. Bring it in, bring your car in anyway, because we've got a Crossstar. And I was a bit disappointed when they said that, because I'd not seen a Crossstar. They didn't have one. But I had read, I watched some YouTube reviews that basically said that they're not worth the extra money, and in fact they're missing some features like heated steering wheel. Well, I've never had a heated steering wheel, as far as I know. I've never had a heated steering wheel, and if I had one, I didn't know I had it, and I've never used it, and I'm not bothered about it. It's got heated seats. To be honest, I think you only really need them when you've got leather seats, because in the winter leather seats are they can be pretty cold. But the normal material seat, it doesn't really make any difference, so I don't use them. But I thought the blind spot monitor would be a good thing, and this car doesn't have it. But having said that, it hasn't got a blind spot really. It's got that little convex part of the mirror, and I always glance over my shoulder anyway, whether there's a blind spot monitor or not. But I was a bit disappointed it didn't have that. There's a couple of other things it hasn't got as well. The side view, which I don't think you need, because the wide angle rear view, rear sensor, the video capture one bit, when it's so wide you can see everything. I mean, it's obviously a little bit distorted. I guess it's a bit like a 360 camera, or a 180 camera in this case, if you just use one side, and you can see everything, so that's not a problem. But because I test driven the EX, it's got apparently better fuel consumption than this car. No, the rest of it, I was a little bit disappointed. But they said, we're not going to charge you any extra, and I think it was, I don't know, 1,500 quid, £2,000 extra. And they'd already given me the price I got for my trade-in was unbelievable last February. I think it's because I'd only done like 7,000-8,000 miles in it because of the lockdowns and stuff, so I'd had it to 26 months and lost £500 on its notional value. And then I got this extra 1,500 quid or 2,000 quid extra worth of car that I didn't order and didn't really want. But then when I saw it, I thought, this is fantastic. Somehow it looks better. And I'm not one for bothering about car. Well, of course, when you look at a car before you've bought it or leased it or whatever, then you obviously you want it to look nice. But it's not the overriding feature for me, unless it's like a Porsche or something. And when I bought my Porsche, I had the wheels changed to have turbo wheels on it, and it just made the car look a lot better. That was when I was in my boy racer days, in my 40s. But yeah, when I saw it, it's a little bit higher, it's got the roof rails on it, a few extra little bits and bobs, and I was delighted with it. But it had already got that polish thing on it. It's not polish, it's a coating, and I highly recommend it, and I'll tell you why. It's not something I would have bought if it wasn't already on. So if I was going through the specs and all the rest of it, and they said, "Oh, would you like this coating?" Normally I'd say no, not interested. But I got it anyway because this was their demonstrator car, so they'd already spec'd it, or it was going to be their demonstrator. And they didn't want to upset me by offering me a delivery date months ahead when we'd already agreed a trade-in value for my car, which would have depleted, presumably. So they gave me this. And my car, I got the car, and it was starting to look a little bit dishevelled. I'd not washed it at all. I live in a flat now, so it's not easy to get the hose pipe out either. And also I park it 9 times out of 10, it's under trees, so you get sap and all sorts of stuff dropping off the trees, and bird poo, and everything else. So it was starting to look a bit ragged. And then we had 2 days of quite heavy rain, and it looked as if it had been valeted. Somehow, that's what the guy said. He said, "You just need to hose it down. It'll look like it's been polished." And I thought, oh yeah, okay, tell me another. Anyway, I had no choice. But if you're thinking about getting a Honda Jazz or any Honda, I'm assuming it's this coating's available for everything, for every model. Get it. I don't even know how much it is, but whatever it is, it's worth it, because it will save you a fortune in the car wash. There were 2 days of heavy rain, and I walked out to the car, and it was shining, and of course the sun was out then, and it had dried off, and it was like somebody had spent hours polishing it. And it's the same today. It rained yesterday and the day before. There's been a bit of rain this morning, and it looks as if it's been polished. I'll show you a quick picture of that when I get there. And so imagine the hours, the Sunday morning guy. I'm not one of those anyway, but there's plenty of them. I'd imagine most people are like that. Around where I live, everybody's out hosing the car down, leather cloth on it, and then out comes the turtle wax, and all the rest of it. And they look gleaming. And people really take, or they used to anyway, I don't know whether they still do, really take pride in the cars. Keep it in tip-top condition, keep it clean, wax it, this and the other. I've never really been one of those people, just simply because I haven't got time. I do like the car to look nice and clean and blah blah blah, but I just don't seem to have the time to do it. Plus I'm a bit lazy when it comes to manual work. But this thing, at very worst, you just get with those power hoses, put the power hoses on it, it will look polished. It really looks like it's been waxed. So however much it costs, it's probably, I couldn't hazard a guess, but maybe 150 quid or something, I don't know. Whatever it is, think about how much it costs you to put it through a car wash. And you can get the different levels of car wash. Our local one, I think it's 4 quid just for the basic, the brushes that spin round, blah blah blah. And that's all you need to do. When you drive out the other end, it looks as if it's been waxed. Well, you can pay 15 quid for a car wash, or more in some of them, where it will go 2 or 3 times, and then it will wax it, and then dry it, and all sorts of stuff. You just won't have to bother. And you know, if you don't live in a flat and you've got your own hose pipe, like my mum and dad's, you just put that kind of, it's not a jet wash, it's just a power hose, and then you just, you know, 10 minutes or whatever, go around the car, looks as if it's waxed. So you'd be saving yourself a fortune and the effort as well. I mean, to be honest, I mean, if the rain's enough to make it look like this does now, through the winter it's going to look shiny all year, all through the winter. In the summer, when you get a dry spell like we've just had, you can stick it through the cheapest possible car wash setting. This guy's going to make it. You put it through the cheapest possible car wash setting, which I think is £3 or £4, and all it does is it just, those big mops just go back one way, then back. Job done, takes about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and it's like you've paid for a £15 wax. So I definitely get that. And yeah, it's something. If the salesman started with me, oh, you know, they'll tell you how great it is and all the rest of it, but somehow you disbelieve them, or I do. I'm a bit kind of skeptical about, you know, if they're trying to flog you something that you kind of think, well, that's not going to work, you're still going to have to wash it, blah blah blah. Not this one. And like I said, I wouldn't have ordered it. When I renew the car, if it hasn't got it on, then I will ask for it, definitely, from now on. A couple of other things that I've noticed, and you notice that these things as you go along, is the Apple. I've got an iPhone. The Apple CarPlay apps on this works fantastic. My last car it didn't. I don't know why. I mean, I normally plug my phone in because it charges as well. But I can send WhatsApp messages. You know, you name it. All the apps you've got on your phone you can use. I mean, I've got one that tracks, you know, it's like a wallet, you track your payments. You can use it on here. What's the other thing? Brake hold. I've only just started using brake hold. There's no reason not to use it. Don't matter where you are, hill starts, all the rest of it, just stick that on. Once you come to a stop, it will automatically apply the handbrake, and then when you press the accelerator it comes off. However, what you want to avoid doing is pressing keeping your foot over the accelerator, because if you press it, the brake will come off and it will try to move forward. But once you've used it a couple of times, you get used to that kind of behaviour, let's say. And but again, that's another feature I didn't even notice. It's right next to the parking brake. Another thing is eco mode. A lot of people say they get better mileage with eco mode off, and that's something I just can't understand, because you know, I think what eco mode, if you drive gently and you accelerate slowly and brake slowly and, you know, stuff which most of us don't, then you probably don't need eco mode. But if you put eco mode on and you put your foot down too much, it might just limit, you know, the acceleration to something a bit more economical. So I leave it on, and I'm getting good enough. I mean, I'm getting 67, averaging roughly 60. I go up to 70 now and again to overtake or whatever, or get out a pack who are also on adaptive cruise. That's another thing that obviously happens a lot. Everybody's on adaptive cruise now, so you can get a train of vehicles following each other at, exact equidistant spacing, which is interesting. So yeah, there's that, that's something I just leave on. I don't even bother trying to test that, because it's there, and it's there for a reason, and I cannot think of any reason why you can get better mileage by switching it off. There we are. 10:15 in the morning. Started off in the Peak District, and I'm now 40 miles away. Very relaxed.